Believe it or not, we are back for another NECA Toys review, a new review for an old figure that has gotten a reissue. So today we're taking a look at the GameStop exclusive Friday the 13th Jason Voorhees, but this is the video game figure. So this guy's done up in the color palette that we saw in the retro NES video game, which is a notoriously bad game, so play that at your own risk, I suppose. We've got some pretty stellar packaging here. This is, of course, the cover artwork from the video game itself. So you've got Jason there, you've got the Friday the 13th logo, we've got a Nintendo Seal of Quality logo, but it's done up for NECA this time around, and then of course you've got the GameStop exclusive sticker on the front. The back of the box has got some product shots, we've got a bit of a write-up, and then you've got the Friday the 13th logo as well. And then being this type of package, you can pop it open, you've got the Game Over screen on the inside flap, and then you can see the figure and all of the contents in the big window. But that's not where this package stops, because it also has a bit of a gimmick. Open the flap to play the authentic theme music. So, pop this bad boy open. And there's a light sensor in there that will play the theme music from the game. I personally love this gimmick. I think it's fantastic. It's really goofy. It's just fun. The music will maybe grate on you after a while, but I think it's very, very nostalgic for someone who has played the game quite a bit. So kudos to NECA for doing something like that on this box. I think it's pretty cool. So let's do it. Let's pull this guy out and take a look. Alright guys, here he is out of the packaging, our retro NES video game Jason Voorhees, and this is one that I'm pretty excited to take a look at. It's a pretty simplistic figure, but it's a very specific thing, and I do have to give a bit of a caveat here that I'm not going to be comparing this figure to any other Jasons out there. I have never in my life handled a single NECA Jason Voorhees figure before, so I have no frame of reference. I'm going in blind on this figure. I'm sure this is just a repaint of something. There's no way that this is a very unique sculpt. I'm sure this is a repaint, which is perfectly fine on its own, but I figured I'd just offer that up before we talk about it. But let's dig right into it. We're going to get started, of course, and take a look at articulation and see what this guy can do. So he does seem to be a little on the basic side, but at the same time, for the game aspect of it, for Jason in general, he's not exactly the most dynamic figure or character ever. I think that he looks like he moves pretty well, and honestly, from the get-go, I don't have any joint issues or anything. If anything, this guy feels far less rigid than any NECA figure I have touched in a short while. So we've got a rotating head here. He goes up and down. The neck also moves as well. The head swivels back and forth. You got a little rock side to side. Arms go out. They swivel. You've got a swivel and hinge at the elbow, and then you've got ball hinges at those wrists. He has a waist twist. Legs go out, forward, backward. You can cut in there at the thigh. You've got a hinge and rotation at the knee. And then the ankles kind of feel like they're ball hinges, but they also are really, really restricted, or ball pegs rather, but they're really restrictive, so you can only move pretty much inside the pant leg, which doesn't really do a whole lot. He can basically stand straight up just fine, but there's not a great deal of dynamic movement around those ankles. Otherwise, though, he seems well enough articulated, and frankly, I have zero joint issues out of this figure. Nothing was stuck, nothing was stiff, everything moves around really freely. Now, as far as the overall look and feel for this guy, they are obviously going for a very specific thing. This is supposed to be the old LJN NES video game, and I think they accomplished that pretty well. It's pretty obvious that this guy has a wacky color scheme, to say the least. He very much looks unique and different from any other Jason that's out there, and I think the overall appeal to this is that color scheme. The figure on its own is fine. I think it's pretty solid, but it's all about the colors for me. And this figure looks just like a big hulking guy. If you take the head out of the picture, it's just a big guy in a shirt and pants and shoes, and I think from that perspective, the sculpt is really, really good. You've got a rubbery shirt piece for the chest. That's a separate piece for the arms, obviously, for articulation's sake. The crotch is rubbery as well to help with articulation. Everything's got a lot of wrinkles and kind of bunched up material all over the place. There are black lines all over the body and down the legs and on the shoes to give kind of a pixelated or cel-shaded or hand-drawn style of look to make it look a little more cartoony almost, while at the same time being realistic. Cartoony is the only way I can really describe it, because if he looked like the video game, he'd be, you know, just a handful of pixels, really. But I think NECA does a good job of mimicking that that video game style in an actual 3D representation here, so it looks pretty good. Colors are really vivid. Colors pop quite well. I just think he looks really nice. And, you know, it's kind of basic in that regard, but it also works. He is, of course, a NECA figure, so he is pretty big. He's not exactly going to scale with a lot of other lines. He's 7-ish inches tall, so he's bigger than most Marvel Legends and stuff like that. But he does look really imposing and really good on his own. And we do have to talk about the head. What would this review be if we didn't talk about this head sculpt? Because there's a lot going on up here. For as simplistic as the figure is, there's a lot going on here. So we do, of course, have the famous hockey mask, and it's its own thing. So you can take this guy off if you want. You've got all the holes in there. You've got the eye holes. You can see his eyes kind of peering through, and then you've got all the holes that surround it. It's got 3 bands that sit over top of the head, and this head is pretty gruesome, which is why I believe this is obviously a repaint of another figure. I just don't know which one or which release or any of that, but someone I'm sure will let me know down below, and thank you in advance for that. But we've got a lot of detail on this, so this is where things kind of ramp up a bit from being less simplistic and being more along the lines of a fully detailed figure that happens to just be kind of blue. So you've got a lot of sculpt in there with the wrinkles and the damage to the face, the misshapen skull, the missing ear, and everything just looks really nice and gruesome and evil and disgusting. Those kind of pink eyes really pop, and then all the black that's on there. So it's a solid sculpt with a minimalistic paint job, but it definitely works in conjunction with this figure. That said, I'm probably always going to keep him like this, but it's nice to have options. And speaking of options, we do of course have a few accessories to talk about, most of which are pretty simplistic, one of which is pretty cool, pretty interesting. But we have got 2 weapons for Jason, so we've got an axe and we've got a machete. They're both done up with brown handles and then just kind of white for the actual metal. He can hold either of these in his right hand only because his left is a style pose hand, but you can get a 2-pose hand going with the axe if you want to have it kind of resting in his left hand while being held in his right. So these look pretty good. I mean, they very much go with the NECA kind of minimalistic paint style for the video game stuff. And then the other accessory that we have is a floating head here. And I'm not sure if this is what I think it is, because there is a floating Pamela Voorhees head in the video game. I'm guessing this is what it's supposed to be. It just says floating head on the back of the box. But there's a lot of detail in this. I'm sure this was reused from something else. So there's a lot of sculpt in that hair, a lot of wash, blues, and then of course that seafoam green, and a bunch of gnarly, nasty skin all over that with some black paint applied to bring out the sculpt a little bit, but not too much, being as minimalistic as it is. And then you have a stand here. I don't know if this is one of the NECA actual head stands or not. I've never seen those in person, but you've got a little base here and a little rod, and you just pop it in, and you have a floating head to go with your Jason. So overall, this is a pretty cool figure. There's not a whole lot more for me to say about this. Frankly, I was interested to take a look at it, and I'm glad I jumped on it because it's pretty cool. It's a fun little figure. It's got an interesting color scheme. It has a little nostalgia for me just because of the era of video games that it comes from. I have not so fond memories of playing this video game. It was a mess, it's hard, and I do not recall ever enjoying playing it, but it's cool to have this figure. I think it comes with just the right amount of accessories. I think the colors work really well. They work really well for being an action figure. Surprisingly, this doesn't look goofy standing on your shelf, and frankly the overall package is superb. That music in the box is goofy, but it's really cool at the same time. So if you're even remotely interested in this figure, I'd say jump on it. Who knows how long these are going to last at GameStop, but they're pretty cool, they're fun, they're different, and yeah, it's a cool figure. Go grab one. So that's going to do it for this look at the GameStop exclusive NECA Toys Friday the 13th Jason Voorhees video game figure. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.